that if you do update your version of Zoom, you will need to come back into the room again. So the panelists and the moderators themselves will be unmuted during their session, and so they should be careful to minimize their background noise. We may mute you occasionally to avoid such noises, and we will unmute you when it's your turn to speak. But you may also use the chat for comments. The chat is very much there for your questions or comments. And make sure that you include your name and affiliation to make it easier for the organizers. In principle, I mean, this is a security thing as well, and we're going to be, obviously moderators will be monitoring it all, and the content or comments may be read out if time allows, or will be recorded and reflected as appropriate in our report. Now, when the floor is open to the audience, please make use of the raise your hand button there. So please raise your hands to request the opportunity to speak. The raise your hands function is down at the bottom of the participant window. And to access the participant window, you click the participant button at the bottom of the Zoom interface there with the bar. Now, you can also, which is very important, activate closed caption at the bottom bar in the Zoom interface there. And you may have been given a hint when you logged in. So that will be running throughout as well. And we could also ask you to kindly display your name and affiliation, because incomplete or suspicious information may cause you to be removed from the meeting room. And obviously we wouldn't want that. So now the meeting is also being recorded, you'll see, and this is going to be used for report writing and communication purposes. Interpretation is being provided at the meeting, so remember that your intervention is being interpreted in the following languages: Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish. And I'll remind you, if you can't see Arabic there, it means you don't have the latest version of Zoom, so you will need to update it. Now, it's important to keep in mind that although the audio quality that you might hear might be satisfactory to you, it may still be insufficient for interpretation purposes. I hope mine is okay. So as a remote participant, you may be occasionally asked to repeat your intervention in those circumstances or speak more closely to the microphone. And now it's important that to keep in mind that the audio quality may deteriorate without prior notice, and eventually this might hinder an interpreter's ability to provide a smooth rendering. And in extreme cases, despite their training and experience, and we have the best interpreters in the world here, our interpreters may have to refrain from interpreting altogether. So for the sake of the interpreters, please speak slowly and clearly. Now, you can listen to the available interpretation channels by clicking on Interpretation, which is in the bottom bar of the Zoom interface, and then selecting the language that you would like to hear. And if you want to hear the original audio or intervene, please select Off in the interpretation menu. In fact, Off simply means floor. Now, participants in a language channel will hear the translated audio, but also the original audio at a lower volume. And to hear only the interpreted language, there's a button at the bottom that says there's a mute original audio, so click on that, which is down at the bottom after all of the languages have been displayed. And if you'd like to intervene, you'll need to set your audio channel to the correct language. You'll need to select either Off in order to speak on the main channel, the floor, or you can choose the language channel that corresponds to your spoken language. Now, it's important to note that if you selected a particular language for interpretation, and you don't select Off, you'll need to speak in that language in order not to create a conflict with the interpretation channels. Every effort is being made, as I'm sure you're aware and will appreciate, to facilitate the smooth flow of the meeting. And we would ask you all to just keep your eyes and ears open. And if you see anything untoward, please let us know. If you have any issues at all, please let us know again. And I thank you for your cooperation, and I wish you a very good meeting. Now, to start off, we are going to start off in a celebratory tone. We're going to show you a short video, which is a 20-year celebration of the Global Symposium for Regulators. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. ITU has hosted the global gathering of ICT regulators since 2000. 20 years of accelerating market growth. 20 years of regulatory evolution. GSR makes sense of the technology swirl around us. Big data, cloud computing, the gig economy, artificial intelligence. Together, we've faced the rise and fall of technologies, enabled the expansion of everything digital, shaped the evolution of generations of regulation, We've helped national economies adapt to new realities, recover from a global financial crisis, and now grapple with an unprecedented worldwide pandemic. Regulation is coming of age. Gone are the days of an obligation-based regulation and a stovepipe ICT marketplace. That was the first generation of regulation. Today, there is a seismic shift moving countries up the regulatory ladder. The fifth generation of regulation is around the corner and is rewriting the rules. It's open, collaborative, agile, and consensus-based. Where does your country stand in this regulatory generation game? In 2020, connecting the next billion is a prospect clearly in view. GSR has highlighted new ideas on offering meaningful connectivity and access to digital communications, financial and health services. Ideas making a real difference to people's lives and offering millions a digital future. The challenges are many, and there is no silver bullet solution. But GSR sees opportunity and light at the end of the tunnel. Building on 20 years of regulatory wisdom and solidarity, GSR 20 is coining the gold standard for digital regulation, leaving the way wide open for the digital transformation. As the regulatory tide drives us towards a connected economy, GSR 20 proposes a wheel of collaborative regulation that leverages stakeholder strengths and puts you in the driving seat with your foot on the accelerator despite the odds. 20th anniversary edition of GSR, 1st to the 3rd of September 2020. For the first time, happening everywhere. Be there. Thank you very much. And you are here now. 20 years of Global Symposium for Regulators, an achievement in itself, but of course, there are lots of challenges and opportunities along the way. I would like now to introduce our keynote speakers, who will be giving us each a keynote speech and informing us more about those opportunities and challenges. And they are Mr. Hulin Zhao, who is ITU Secretary General, Ms. Dorian Bogdan Martin, who is Director of the Telecommunication Development Bureau, and Mr. Dan Sheblum, who is Chairman of GSR 20. So thank you very much. So I will now hand the floor to Mr. Zhao, our first keynote speaker. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, dear friends. Welcome you to this core session of this 20th edition of GSR. And this GSR comes at a time when the role of ICT and telecommunication regulators and policymakers has taken center stage in the response to and recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. But I also like to take this opportunity to appreciate our collective efforts. And our moderator just mentioned that over the last 20 years, we had a lot of activities, and he showed us that participants and those key experts to work together to debate on the market challenges. But I think that more than that, all of us worked very, very hard. I was there at the first edition of GSR in year 2000, and I did not see my photo there, but I saw some photos where I show myself there. But over the last 20 years, no matter how hard the world suffered from financial crisis, natural crisis, and some kind of trade crisis, many crises. But still the world, we developed with ICT services and infrastructures marvelously now available almost everywhere. That is the reason today we profit this marvelous achievement. Just keep in mind that nobody could imagine that in 2020 we will suffer this kind of COVID-19, and everybody now is forced under this so-called confinement of COVID-19, and economic life is almost stopped or slowed down, and the social life stopped or slowed down, but people can still survive and even make some kind of good progress. And with many ICT applications, and people talk to each other, connect to each other. All this cannot be there without the wonderful work of our regulators over the last 20 years. So that I would like to take this opportunity to, to express on behalf of IT management to our family of regulators for your wonderful work. Of course, we understand that it's not always, excitement or happiness, and you have suffered a lot. You have to work with the private sector and convince them to invest. You have to create a good environment to attract them, and you have to work with your government to get the support from top, from your colleagues. Sometimes frustrating and sometimes, exciting. But anyhow, I think that if you look at the current situation, you will be proud that our work deserved the word appreciation. So let me just add these few words to express my feelings at this moment, 20 years after we created the first edition of GSR in year 2000. It is not by accident that the ITU's initial response to the crisis focused on regulators and policymakers. Not only because for each crisis we have to come to our regulators, but here now we have more reasons to come to you. So that we created in March the Global Network Resiliency Platform, a tool to help our membership address the unprecedented demand faced by communication networks. Since then, Reg for COVID has become a place where ICT regulators, policymakers, and stakeholders from over the world can share the best practices and lessons learned. It is this spirit of collaboration that brings us all online here today. So collaboration and collaborative regulation has been steadily gaining momentum, reflecting a data-driven world where the line between the ICT sector and the other sectors have become increasingly blurry. ITU has experienced this digital transformation firsthand, for sure, with the new players active in different sectors of the economy joining our organization in large numbers and becoming an integral part of our deliberations and discussions. So the challenge is that not everyone is sharing in this transformation, far away from it. The latest data from ITU show that today still 3.6 billion people remain offline, with much of the unconnected living in the least developed countries. We had statistics that in least developed countries, broadband connectivity is less than 20%, while the average is already so-called 54%. Now here we have another observation. 54, what does that mean? We get a lot of people connected, but if you look at the development phase, we know that over the last 2 years, this improvement by adding additional people online, slowing down. And we still have 46% not connected yet. The other day, in the middle of June, and Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Guterres, announced at the high-level panel on the digital transformation that he wished to see everybody be connected by 2030 with affordable prices. By 2030, we have 10 years to go. We have 10 years, we can do a lot, but we have 10 years. If you calculate the progress we made over the last few years, if we take 2% per year, 46%, you need 23 years. So by 2030, can we achieve that goal? So this is really something quite a challenge. So building back better means making sure that we leave no one behind, no one offline. And hopefully by 2030, I also like to share with you my answer to these questions. At ITU Telecom 2019 Budapest, people ask me some questions. Ask, Mr. Zhou, can everybody be connected by 2030? I said, I'm afraid it may not be that easy. Because look at the security, actual situation. Look at the the issues. And if that was not that easy, 2019 with the COVID-19, now we may have more challenges. So as we look to the recovery, investment needs in ICT infrastructure are in hundreds of billions of dollars. This is one of the conclusions of ITU's new Connecting Humanity study. As I told the G20 digital economy ministers a little while ago, mobilizing such levels of funding will require the contributions and collaboration of both private and public sectors. And in particular, the investment from private sector is absolutely important. And approaching ICT investment with a new whole of government ICT investment strategy. So yesterday, I joined UNIDO and James to have an interview. I put my famous 4 I's: infrastructure, investment, and innovation and inclusiveness. So when I talked about infrastructure, people understand that. When I talked about investment, I put these figures. I said these figures are study figures. And when you come to the reality, you may have more challenges. And then the moderator took my word saying that, Secretary General, you mentioned that the money is very important. If you have no money, you cannot get development. I said, no, be careful. Money is absolutely important, but money is not the only thing. We needed to have innovative, good idea of infrastructure, and we also have to get good innovative ideas for how can we invest. We need to have a smart investment strategy. We needed to create a good environment to check the investment. So that, I think that is not that easy, but anyhow, that is a challenge. Too often, the various ministers in our government invest in ICT infrastructure without consulting with each other. In particular, we're not even consulting with our ICT ministers and the regulators, because they get a sponsorship from partners other than ICT industry or other than ICT authorities. And then they do their business with ICT to improve their system. So they may not necessarily come to our experts. So that is, causing sometimes duplications and resulting in significant inefficiencies and resource shortfalls. That is why I have encouraged the health and ICT ministers to work closely together when I joined their meeting of G20 since the beginning of this crisis, as short ministers responsible for other sectors of our economies. So, ladies and gentlemen, this crisis has demonstrated that ICT is a unifying thread that runs through all aspects of our societies and economies. And our approach to ICT investment must recognize and embrace this reality. So accelerating broadband development is a formidable challenge and opportunity, in particular in those hard-to-reach areas with no internet access, where topography and demography too often defeat market viability. Investors face many hurdles, from high operational and maintenance costs to long cycles of return on investment. So earlier this year, I issued ITU Circular number 3, because during the Christmas period, I could not stay calm after I made that questions at the ITU Telecom in September in Budapest, Hungary last year. So that I issued this circular to our members, to our regional regulatory authorities, to sector members, because I recognize that there is opportunity for us. So we have to face these challenges and problems, but I believe the cost of not solving them will be even higher. So as the UN Secretary General Guterres reminds us often, and particularly recently, only by working together can we connect all people by 2030. So the whole parts of the world's economies have shifted to digital platforms. This will require regulators to work with investors including operators, to create the conditions for a better investment environment, but also require us to work with other ministries, with other government authorities to meet the needs and expectations of the unconnected with more connectability, but also with more safety, better digital skills, and improved affordability. At stake is the ability of regulators and policymakers everywhere to unlock investment, to support growth, jobs, and innovation, but also to save lives and the future relevance of ICT regulators in this increasingly connected world. I want to thank all those who have been instrumental in the enduring success of the Global Symposium for Regulator, and particularly, to my colleague, Director of BDT, Ms. Dorian Bogdan Martin. The collective learnings of the past 20 years have prepared us to face the future with confidence. So I look forward to our discussions and this year's GSR best practice guidelines, and I wish you all a very successful GSR 20. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zhao. I'd like to now hand the floor to Ms. Dorian Bogdan Martin, Director of the Telecommunication Development Bureau for ITU. Dorian, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Max, and thank you, Secretary General, for those inspiring words. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really delighted to join you today to kick off the core program of GSR 20 sessions, which represents the culmination of an extensive program of consultative events, beginning with the GSR leadership debate on the 30th of June. That the 20th anniversary of our Global Symposium for Regulators should have fallen in a year of unprecedented global turmoil and disruption might be considered a misfortune. I would consider it auspicious. Auspicious because after 20 years of lobbying for the vital importance of digital networks to the development of our societies and our economies, we finally have the full attention of leaders around the world. The COVID crisis has thrown digital technologies sharply into the spotlight, and we may never again benefit from the intense focus governments are now according to digital networks and services. COVID has brought with it the universal realization as we enter the post-digital age, it's no longer just about technology. The ICT sector now underpins every other economic activity. In many countries, it's also the foundation for a host of essential social services and a vital driver of economic growth. Throughout the developing world, digital technologies can serve as a powerful transformational catalyst that overturns chronic development roadblocks and finally puts vital services like education, healthcare, and access to information within reach of billions. Dear colleagues, they say that some have greatness thrust upon them. I believe the ICT regulatory community is at just such an inflection point because our work over the next few months and years will be absolutely instrumental in defining the new normal for a post-COVID world. Looking back over the archives when we organized the very first GSR, months after my first daughter was born, I was struck by the words of the then director of the BDT who said, if ICT sector reform is the key to bridging the digital divide, then regulators are the architects of that bridge building project. I think that very vivid image has never been as pertinent as it is at this juncture. In the midst of the COVID crisis, with digital connectivity finally occupying its rightful place at the top of every nation's national agenda, your work as regulators and as policymakers has become absolutely critical. Getting the policy mix right to enable growth in networks and services has never mattered so much. Fifth generation collaborative ICT regulatory measures and tools are the new frontiers for regulators and policymakers as they work towards maximizing the opportunity afforded by digital transformation. Employing these measures and tools will help ensure that more people in more countries can reap the benefits of the digital economy, improving people's lives at a pace and scale never seen before. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, over the next 3 days, we will be looking at some of the burning issues facing regulators in an ever more complex and interdependent ecosystem. We will have lightning sessions on a number of major developments and achievements, including the Reg for COVID platform that we worked with so many of you over the past several months at the start of the COVID crisis. We'll also see the launch of our brand new digital regulation handbook and online platform, which is the fruit of a collaborative effort between ITU and the World Bank. We'll also hear, as the Secretary General, about the forthcoming Connecting Humanity report that was developed in collaboration with Saudi Arabia in its role as this year's G20 president. And of course, the outcomes of our heads of regulators executive roundtable that was just held, our regional regulatory associations meeting that was held yesterday, our industry meeting also held yesterday, and all of the events over the summer months that were held on a regional basis. Dear colleagues, I think we all agree that GSR discussions and debates have always been extremely compelling. But this year, they take on a new amplitude because much is going to be asked of us post-crisis as governments start to pick up the pieces and strive to build back better. Our ICT policy and regulatory frameworks will need to be fit for purpose. They will need to be up to date, flexible, incentive-based, and market-driven to support digital transformation across sectors and across geographical regions. In short, they will need to be up to one of the greatest challenges of our time, and that is to leverage the power of digital platforms and infrastructures to build the resilience that we need to protect us against future global emergencies. We must not miss our chance. We must unite. We must unite as the digital ecosystem and seize this unique opportunity to harness the unprecedented tide of political will and to put digital at the heart of our global recovery. And with that, I thank you very much. Back over to you, Max.
Thank you very much indeed, Dorian, Bogdan, Martin. Dan Scherblum, Chairman of the 20th edition of GSR, the floor is yours.
There, I'm unmuted as well. That should help. So I think I'll do the formal introductions now. Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers of ITU Member States, Secretary General of the ITU, Mr. Hulin Zhao, Director of Telecommunications Development Bureau, Mrs. Dorian Bogdan Martin, elected officials of the ITU, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues. It is my very great pleasure to welcome you all to the Global Symposium for Regulators 2020. As the GSR celebrates this year its 20th edition, we are celebrating 20 years of changing regulatory frameworks, presenting an updated 20th anniversary edition of the ICT Regulation Handbook, as well as concrete guidance on steps that regulators can take to have meaningful connectivity for digital transformation. I think the importance of the GSR 20 is clearly shown by the hundreds of delegates that have registered and signed up and are present at this time. It's very impressive to see the numbers. The GSR was, as you know, established to strengthen and stabilize regulatory frameworks across the globe, to be a global meeting place where regulators and policymakers can discuss solutions to the very many challenges that continuously arise in the sector. And during the ongoing crisis of COVID-19, the importance of inclusive access to the internet for a range of vital issues such as health, education, economy, has become evidently clearer than ever. The challenges during the summer and before that spring with COVID has truly brought our community together. And I think we have the opportunity to continue to come together and use the new regulatory approaches to accelerate the inclusive growth of ICTs. We hope that the GSR 20 will provide all of you with the opportunity to share experiences as well as to collaborate, identify evolving regulatory tools and approaches to bring affordable, safe, secure, and trusted connectivity everywhere. Improving the access and use of digital technologies is now, perhaps more than ever, the key to the achievement of the global goals, be they fighting the pandemic or reaching other global goals, such as the Sustainable Development Goals. I look forward to fruitful discussions and listening to the full lineup of ICT regulators and policymakers that will speak over the next days, ready to share lessons learned and help us all to provide better, more secure, more resilient ICT networks and services. It is really a pleasure to be part of the celebration of the 20th edition, including the launch of the Digital Regulation Handbook and Platform and a GSR leadership debate on how to build and grow after COVID. On behalf of the ITU, on behalf of my own organization, Swedish Post and Telecom Authority, and on behalf of BEREC, I sincerely hope that you all find the next 3 days productive and informative. It is together that we create a valuable GSR best practice guidelines and outcome document on the Global Symposium for Regulators. And it is during the consultation of this document, your ideas has been put forward. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who contributed to that process so much for your contributions. They are indeed very welcome and necessary. And finally, I should also take this opportunity to thank the ITU Secretariat for the professional planning and hosting that they have made so far, and that I look forward to continue to follow over the meeting at the first ever virtual Global Symposium for Regulators that takes place at the same time everywhere. And very final word, last but not least at all, thank you all for joining virtually. I wish you the best in the coming days. Be active and have a very good GSR. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Dan Sjöblom, Dorian, Bogdan, Martin, Hulin Zhao, for those inspiring and welcoming words. We're now going to get you active, as Mr. Sjöblom invited you to be, and to all ask you to turn on your cameras. We're going to do a quick group photograph. Of course, we can't get you all together standing next to each other nowadays, but we can at least get you all next to each other in this small computer screen. And we're going to do a quick gathering of everybody here. So if everybody can try and turn their cameras on wherever you are, we'll give you a couple of seconds to straighten up your ties or tuck your shirts in, and and that's wonderful. And then I'm just going to I will ask you to give me your best smiles, and we will take a quick series of screen grabs here of everybody. So just looking at Ajib, I'm not sure if he's still with us, but everybody, I think, is got almost, well, we've got a very, very large amount of people. That's brilliant. You're looking fantastic, all of you. Just make sure that the camera's not cutting your head off. See a few people there cutting their head off there. Okay, and just try and be there. Nice big smiles. Okay, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think there are several layers of these, so I'll just do that one more time, just to give the our keen photographers a chance to get the best screenshot there. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us here, and I'm sure that you will find the next 3 days very worthwhile. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before moving on to our next session and rich GSR discussions, I will remind you of a couple of things. One is, as I say, if you try and keep your cameras off while the discussions are on,